Hari Hari Bol. Hari Hari Hari.
Hare
Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangam Mangayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bandi Shri Gurun Vinatadam Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Yahevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gaura Tishe Nityanandam Namastubhyam Prema Ananda Pradayane Kalau Kalamasha Nashaya Janava Pataye Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhakta Rupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shantikam He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jayatam Suruto Pango Mama Manda Matergati Matsarvasva Padam Bojo Radha Madana Mohana Divyat Vrindaranya Kalpa Drumadha Srimad Ratnagara Simhasanasto Srimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prestadbhi Sevyamano Smarami Shriman Rasa Rasarambhi Vam Shivata Tatakstitaha Karshana Venu Svanayir Gopir Gopinata Shriyestavaha Bhaktya Vihina Aparadha Lakshan Chittascha Kamari tarangamadye kripamai tvam sharanam prabannam vrinde namaste charanarvindam vrindai tulsi devai priyai keshavasya cha Krishna bhakti prade devi Sachavachai namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Bolo Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So first of all, I'm offering my unlimited Dandavat Pranams and my Shraddha Pushpanjali at the lotus feet of my most worshipable, beloved Diksha and Siksha Gurudevs. Nityalila Pravishtom Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtatarasata Sri Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada. Then Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj. And Nityalila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Ashtatarasata Sri Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. I offer my Dandavat Pranams to the lotus feet of all of my Sri Sri Rupa Nuga Guru Varga and my Siksha Guru Varga. And I offer my Dandavat Pranams to all the Vaishnavas and to all the Vaishnavis all throughout the world who are tuning in with this broadcast of Sri Ras Panchadhyay, our attempt to immerse ourselves in the nectar that has been given by Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj in his book titled Sri Ras Panchadhyay, and in which he is giving us the commentaries of three different great acharyas who illuminate the meaning of each and every shloka of these 5 chapters of Rasa. So I'm praying to all of our Guru Varga that they will bless us, that we can begin to try to enter Rasa Panchadhyay. So I had many reflections and many thoughts in the last couple of days regarding these topics. And I also read certain very important sections of the books of our Srila Prabhupada and our Srila Gurudev. And what's beginning to happen, what I'm realizing in this attempt, is that there's a crystallization taking place. You know, it's something like, suppose we wanted to put together a university course, but not any ordinary university. It would have to be a Vaishnava university, like Srila Prabhupada actually wanted, right here in Mayapur. Varnashram College, University. So if someone were to want to put together a course, of course, who does that? Who puts courses together? Oh, okay. What kind of courses?
These kind of courses.
Oh, for what?
Darshan Shiksha, Venugit. We're working on that. We would like to starting online and then maybe from here in person and Navadvip every year.
Wow.
We should do it.
Okay. We're going to need a second microphone because the police will not be able to hear everything. We have everyone participating. So I'm ordering 2 mics.
Okay.
one mic stand, maybe two. One with...
I have a mic stand up in the
Okay. And the speaker.
Yeah.
Okay. And just to give me the amount and order it, and it's done. Okay?
Maybe I'll come up to your room and I'll show you the
Yeah.
speaker making work it out.
Yeah, please do that. Okay. Just want to get this completed. All right, so that's pretty amazing that we have Manjari Didi, who is putting together different study courses. Yeah. So now, as I contemplate this, and I'm doing this from my own subjective experience, okay? And when I was asking before, who puts courses together? Who does that? Professors do that in universities, right? Professors put courses together. Students don't do it. Professors do. So if someone is going to put together a course, it means they have to understand the subject matter, right? Otherwise, what's the use? So I'm just reflecting at how I've been exposed for so many years, especially with our Gurudev, traveling with him all over the world, and so many, many, many lectures, and so many parikramas, and so many years. Many of us also have that same exposure in our lives. But in my case, a lot of the topics that Gurudev would speak, he would, of course, call on various of his students who were with him to assist him and to also speak, because also Gurudev's time limit was there for his speaking. But also Gurudev wanted that those who are native English speakers, and he's traveling in the West, that there will also be some learned devotees who understand the topics that he's going to be presenting. They understand it, and they have some realization. So, we have, a number of us have the experience of being thrown in to the swimming pool, right out of the womb. They have that way of birthing, where the child actually starts swimming automatically. It's there already inside. But we had been with Srila Prabhupada for so many years and read his books, listened to innumerable lectures, and also Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, same. But when we came to Srila Gurudev, he had a particular presentation that he wanted to make to the world. Now, did he make that presentation exactly the same carbon copy in every place? Why? Because he's an acharya. He's a topmost level Rupanuga Mahabhagavad Rasik acharya. So therefore he's extremely sensitive to who are the audience, who will be understanding what he's telling. I know that in certain places Gurudev didn't even go into the Srimad Bhagavatam practically, because he considered that the devotees, they needed something much, much more basic and simple. And then in other places, I was very surprised, Gurudev went very deep. Generally it was like a 1-week festival, as you know, in all the different locations. One time in Germany, and it wasn't a huge crowd, it was in the middle of the winter, But Gurudev went very deep in that 1 week. And that was the time of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's appearance and the disappearance of Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj. And there were a number of Gaura Govinda Maharaj disciples there, like our Ashram Maharaj and Raghunath Bhatta and various others. So, but at the end of that festival, and Gurudev was going to leave the next day, we had an opportunity to go into his room while everything was being finalized in the packing and he was about to go. And then I just told Gurudev, Srila Gurudev, what you spoke here at this festival, so very many deep and very high topics. He said, yes, because there were many senior devotees present. Yes. This is the criteria. what the Mahabhagavad will speak depends on who he's speaking to. And in particular, with the high-level topics, and especially topics that are touching the extreme separation moods of the Braja Gopis, which would really be the objective of Srila Gurudev in most of his festivals, was to at least touch that. But even at some places, he didn't even go into the Gopi praying topic. He stopped at Damodar Leela. Why? There were many Indians in the room. They wanted him to speak a little bit in Hindi. He spoke. That was in Houston, Texas. But at that festival, he didn't go farther, because he understood the adhikar of the audience. He understood who's doing bhajan, who's not doing bhajan, what level of bhajan are they doing, what can they understand. Like that. So anyway, as I was contemplating, then some thoughts came to my mind that there are particular, very essential parts of Gurudev's books and of Prabhupada's books that he earmarked, that he highlighted, that this is what you need to understand. I'll ask you, what do you think on this list?
Are you talking about high topics or just any topic?
Well, I'm not even going to say high or low. I'm just going to say essential. That Gurudev is saying, you have to know this. You have to study this. You have to read this.
So, would you like to read that?
Otherwise, if you don't do that, then you won't be able to understand this.
Definition of pure bhakti.
Yes, that's certainly the Anyabhilashita Shunyam Shloka, for sure. And of course, that's covered in 3 different places in Gurudev's books. One is Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu, where there's a few pages of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's commentary on that shloka. Then also Bhajan Rahasya of Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, and also Bhakti Tattva Viveka. You see. Okay, what else?
Gradations of devotees, again, we have opportunity.
Gradations of devotees. But where are you going to find that? Yeah, at that time, that was not out. When he was speaking those topics, his version was not out. Yeah.
In his Harikata.
Huh?
You could only see it in his Harikata
Yeah.
until the books are published in Hindi.
Yeah.
And then in
And then in English, right. Okay, I got one. Maharaj first, he had his hand up.
Shloka number 8,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, definitely. But, yeah, you already said it, but I'm just emphasizing the whole Upadeshamrita. And not just reading it. Oh, if you don't follow it, you can't understand anything. Gurudev told a story one time himself. It was some Indian person, one of his followers, disciples, I don't remember at all who it was. But that person wanted to hear something very high from Gurudev in some darshan. And he said, do you know the first slok of Upadeshamrita? And he didn't even know it by memory. Okay. So exposed. You want to hear that? And you don't even know the first slok of Upadeshamrita. What to speak of following it? Bluff. Calling bluff. Anything else? Yes, of course. Gurudev mentioned that numerous times. That Bhaktivinoda Thakur has put the whole ocean into a small bottle. In Jaiva Dharma. Yeah, Dasmul Shiksha, but that's part of Jaiva Dharma. Yeah, that's one section Gurudev told us. Yes? Huh? Yes.
the first 4 chapters of Chaitanya Charitamrita?
Yes. But number 4. That's what I'm waiting for from all of you. Number 4. Do you know how important chapter 4 is? Do you all know? How many times have you read it? Is there anyone here who's read it once? The whole chapter? Twice? 3 times?
Twice.
Which book? Sorry, Maharaj, which book?
Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila chapter 4. Okay. So there's a few here. But Gurudev told us, if you don't read and understand very deeply chapter 4 of Adi Lila, you will not be able to understand the whole rest of the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita. Now, if I asked any of you who have read it, what is the reason for that? What is it about the 4th chapter that makes it so essential that unless you read that, you can't understand the rest of Chaitanya Charitamrita? Or what to speak of 10th canto and all the Ras Panchadhyaya and everything else. What is it in that 4th chapter? Can't hear.
You get Mahaprabhu's personal reasons for example.
Speak loud.
Yeah, people are not going to be able to hear unless everybody speaks a little bit louder.
Okay. It explains Mahaprabhu's personal reasons, his 3 unfulfilled desires for coming to this world. And,
Yes.
well, internal and external. Like what his reasons for himself and his reasons for the jivas.
Okay.
What he came to get.
In the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita, 1st chapter, how many essential verses are there? First 1 through what? 14. We were lucky to be with Prabhupada in 75. He went through each verse. Of course, at that time, we didn't know anything. We didn't even practically have that volume yet, the first volume, the first chapters. But what does Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami do? He gives certain verses in those first 14 verses, especially around the first 8 verses. Okay, he composes some of them. He also takes Rupa Goswami's composition, and especially he takes Swarup Damodar Goswami's composition of these Sanskrit slokas. And then what does he do in the first 6 chapters? And then even goes beyond that. But he explains each one of those verses extensively, very deeply. And it just so happens that the first 6 verses, mostly Swarup Damodar Goswami, but one of them I quoted in the other class, Anarpita Chirim Chirat Kurunaya Vitiratu, that's Rupa Goswami, right? The purpose of these shlokas is that Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is now introducing the personality of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, namely Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And he's introducing who he is. What is his tattva? What is Gaur Tattva? And in order to explain Gaur Tattva, there's also a very great need to explain Krishna Tattva. Because he's Krishna. Gauranga Mahaprabhu is none other than Krishna. And also, it is necessary to understand Radha Tattva. Because Mahaprabhu is a combination of Radha and Krishna. Right? So in the 4th chapter, in the first 3 chapters, he's already explained the shlokas 1 through 4. And they also describe the reasons, the purpose and the reasons for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu descending into this world. And there are also categories of reasons. Some of the reasons are primary, some are secondary. Some are external reasons, some are internal reasons for his descent. There's a combination of reasons. Of course, the devotees did a very wonderful documentary. Venugopal Prabhu and Jayanti and Vajanti Ma. Yeah. So, and that was nicely presented. The reasons. Because this is a topic that Gurudev chose as his first introductory topic when he came to the West on the first tour. This was his topic. And he was also reading from Srila Prabhupada's own Chaitanya Charitamrita. And so Srila Gurudev lectured on that for the first couple of years, quite a bit. Because why? Why did Srila Gurudev choose to lecture on that topic? I mean, he has his mission to bring, we all know that Srila Gurudev came out of India to give something that all the devotees have not yet gotten. And to fulfill the mission of Srila Prabhupada, who didn't have time to give so many things. But why did he choose the topic of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? The reasons for his appearance. Because Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami has put into the 4th chapter the essence. Verses 5 and 6. What are they? Radha Krishna Pranaya Vikritir Halladini Shakti Rasmad Ekatmanava Pibuhi Puradeha Vedam Butoto Chaitanyakyam Prakatam Adana Tatvayam Chaikyamaptam Radha Bhava Jyoti Subalitam Nomi Krishna Surupam. And then the next, Sri Radhaya Pranaya Mahima Kidrishovana Yaiva Swadyo Yena Bhuta Madhurima Kidrishova Madhya Sokyam Chasyam Mad Anubhavata Kidrisham Veti Lobat Tadbhavadya Samajani Sachigarva Sindo Harindu. To explain those 2 verses, what Kaviraj Goswami has put in that 4th chapter is astonishing. Now, I could tell more, but I want to also connect other things, because I asked you, what are the essential things Gurudev told that need to be read? I have one. Later on, in the Madhya Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Which chapter? Rai Ramananda Samvad. And if you read Adi 4, and that's Madhya 8, you will see that some of the topics are similar in both of those 2 chapters. And goes deeper and deeper and deeper. That is very essential. Srila Gurudev loved Rai Ramananda Samvad. They've also made the book from his lectures, yes? And Srila Gurudev, we were fortunate to be with him a couple of times. Once during Kartik and once during Purushottam month, Parikrama in Puri. But in both cases, there were some visits from certain individuals who were very senior personalities in the Gaudiya Math, and they were like, why is Narayan Ram speaking such high? And one of them came, and Gurudev gave them a chance to speak, very elderly. I'm not telling names, don't even ask me. And he spoke very nice, but very basic for Nam Sankirtan. Then he excused himself, he had to go. And then he was also senior to Gurudev. And then Gurudev, after he had gone, then he says, now we can go back to the Rai Ramananda Samvad. So this is the thing. We're coming in this sampradaya. We call it the Rupanuga Sampradaya, but it also is called the Bhaktivinoddhara. It's also called the Gaur Saraswat Sampradaya. And in the modern day, it's also called the A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Sampradaya. Many extensions of that, but especially in this final segment, at least for now, is the Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj. We should know what he came to give. And not only know that, but we should practice it. We should aspire. And unless someone is serious, they cannot aspire. That's not possible. How can you aspire for something unless you're making an attempt to have that? Otherwise, you're not sincere. Right? Oh, I aspire to have this. Oh, I want this. I want that this will happen to me. But what are you doing to enable it to happen? Oh, I'm just too fallen. I can't do anything. No. Sorry. You'll have to wait. Next life, next 10 lives, whatever. You want it now? Then you have to do the work. Hard work. And Gurudev points that out, especially in Manasiksha. Not an easy thing. However, it's full of nectar. That's one encouraging thing about this movement. I often tell that the beginning stage of trying to enter into Uttama Bhakti, the beginning stage is Sharanagati. We all know that. And Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, he gave such an incredible contribution by compiling an entire book, elucidating the 6 limbs of Sharanagati with shlokas and quotations from various very important shastras and acharyas and so forth. So that book he titled Prapanna Jivanamritam. We have it in English. It's been there for many, many years. So, what is the meaning of the title? Prapanna Jivanamrita. Jivanamrita means either life nectar or nectar in the life. Jivanamrita. Of who? Prapanna. Those who are prapanna means surrendered. In this life nectar, nectar in the life of the surrendered souls. And then in his book, he also composed a couple of chapters where he himself was explaining what's about to come. And he titled like the first and second chapters something like Prelude to Nectar. So it's all about nectar. And that's the thing. We know that Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his song, Sharanagati song, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori, that he's telling there that Atyanta Durlabha Prema Kori Baridan Shikai Sharanagati Bakatera Pran. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has descended from Goloka Vrindavan out of his causeless mercy. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Jive Doya Kori, desiring to give mercy to all jivas. Swaparshada Sviyadhama Saha Avatari. He descended with who? Swaparshada, his own eternal associates. Swaparshada Sviyadhama, his own Dhamma, his own abode. He transported it from the spiritual realm and made it an exact facsimile in this world. Prabhupada used that word, facsimile. I was reading it today. Brajabhumi, facsimile of the original Brajabhumi.
Facsimile means like a replica?
Yeah, like that. It means that. Although we know it's actually not different. So, why did he bring his Dham? Why did he descend to give mercy? What did he want to give? Atyanta Durlabha Prem. Atyanta Durlabha Prem means extremely rare. We talked about that in the other class. Atyanta Durlabha Prema Koribari Dan. In order to give it, then Shikaye Sharanagati Bakatera Pran. What does that mean? He instructed the process of Sharanagati in order to give the most rare praying. And this Sharanagati is the Pran. It is the life force of the Bhaktas. So anyone who is trying to bypass Sharanagati is very foolish indeed. Because there's no other way to enter into the house of Bhakti. Gurudev used to say how it is the doorway. So to enter the house, you cannot go through the wall. So to enter the house of Bhakti, you have to go through the doorway. And that is Sharanagati. So in this way, I mentioned the other day that there is also the Venogita. And especially the Venogita introduction. And when you read Gurudev's introduction to Ras Panchadhyay, when you read the Venogita introduction, you'll see that there's a number of crossovers there. But they're both highly essential to understand. So, I made a list here this morning about, I didn't finish it, I just wrote down a few of the books that Gurudev emphasized. So, I told the other day, Manasiksha, Sikshastakam, Bhajan Rahasya, Jaiva Dharma, Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu Bindu, Rai Ramananda Samvad, Venogita, Gopi Gita, Ras Panchadhyay. That's what I have so far. So, we're putting a course together. And that's the way I'm looking at this now. Okay, and I really feel that just like you have a course that someone becomes committed to taking, they come, they arrive on time, they bring the books, they study the books when they're not in the class, they do the work, right? And as a result of that, they're able to continue to receive what the professor is giving when they do come to the class. You know, so I think that in the future there will be many, Gaudiya Vaishnava universities all over the world. Because Prabhupada also told that in the future there will be thousands and millions of gurus. So what to speak of devotees? That is required to give Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission everywhere throughout the world. And there will be different types of gurus, different levels of gurus. So, to enter into the Ras Panchadhyay, then we have to carefully understand. We can just read it. We can just immediately go into it and read it. But in actuality, if we carefully study these others, we will be now prepared. We will be, some inspiration will come in our hearts. Because that's the reason why the introductions are given. So that now, the person who's about to read it will understand what is the subject matter and what is the criterion for somebody to understand the subject matter. So we began to read the introduction to Ras Panchadhyay the other day, and we're going to continue. So we were, Gurudev was discussing about Shukadeva Goswami and how Shukadeva Goswami, the son of Bhagavan Shri Vedavyas, the speaker of the Srimad Bhagavatam, what was his condition? He was completely renounced throughout his whole life. So this crown jewel of swan-like liberated sages was beyond the influence of the illusory energy. Indeed, he did not even know the difference between male and female. How do we know that? How do we know that? Yes, in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is there. When Srila Vyasadeva was walking after him. When Srila Vyasadeva was walking, following him. And there were some young maidens who were bathing in the river. And of course in India, in villages, they just take their clothes off, they put it, and no males come to that place generally. So they're just bathing without any clothing. But when Sukadeva Goswami came by there, they saw him. Beautiful, young, 16 years old. Extremely, exquisitely attractive features of his body, everything. Transcendental, sweet personality.
He was also naked.
Huh? Yes, and he was also naked. Yes. And when he came by, they just saw him, and they didn't feel any kind of shame that they have to cover themselves, nothing. Just like if a child was there. Huh? But then Srila Vyasadeva came shortly after, pursuing him on the village path, on the forest pathway. But all of a sudden, when they saw elderly Srila Vyasadeva, they immediately scurried to get their clothing. And Vyasadeva, he had seen from a distance that when Shukadev walked by there, they didn't do anything. But when he walked by, then they immediately covered themselves. So he asked the girls, why didn't you cover yourself when he walked by? And what was their answer? Because he's completely pure. There's no lust in his heart. He's like a young child. He doesn't even know the difference between male and female. You see? So, this is being mentioned here about the purity of Shukadeva Goswami. And Gurudev is saying, if this Ras Leela, if it were a mundane, lusty affair, like a lot of people wrongly take it to be that, this is a big, big problem, especially in India. They have no proper knowledge at all. They've never read Srimad Bhagavatam. A lot of them haven't even read Bhagavad Gita, and they don't even know that Krishna is really the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So they're entirely unable to understand Ras Leela. But one important point that should be made in this context. Why did Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, in the fourth year, actually third year, 1969, like that, he had already done his translation of the entire 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And that book, he wanted to print it. And it was titled Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And in there, all 90 chapters of the 10th canto are there, including the 5 chapters of Ras Leela, and the other chapters of the intimate moods of separation mood, Venu Geet, Gopi Geet, Brahmara Geet, all of these things are there. And he wanted it distributed in mass by the millions. There was no restriction, not only to this kind of person, not to this kind of person. No. Why did he take such a, you could call it a risk?
One he said he was concerned that he might not live long enough to complete the entire Srimad Bhagavatam. And also he said within Krishna book, he put the entire Bhagavad Gita on the other 9 cantos preceding the 10. So we felt that it was put in a context where people did not misunderstand.
True. But your first reason, we could argue against that. And we could say, oh, because he didn't have much time left, so he wanted to do that. So then we could say, well, then it should be only restricted to the devotees. Do you know that in Gaudiya Math, those who are new joiners in Gaudiya Math, even during the time of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, they were definitely restricted from reading certain books like Chaitanya Charitamrita, especially Antya. That's completely off limits. And 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, because they're newer. But here we have Srila Prabhupada, who is giving to the man on the street who's eating meat, illicit sex, breaking all his totally sinful life. They know nothing. They don't even know that it's sinful, a lot of them. But yet he's making that available to the world. All throughout the world. And in all multi-languages. Anything more besides what Rishabdev Prabhu told? It's correct what he told. Okay, I'm giving what I remember that he told. Srila Prabhupada told, there are many, many letters. Of anybody here in this room, probably Bhopadev Prabhu, the veteran book distributor, knows so many of these quotes from Prabhupada's years of letters. And how Prabhupada emphasized that these books should be distributed. No restriction at all. And he said, if a person reads even one page, even one paragraph, even one sentence, then it even said, even one word, his whole life can be changed by the power of that subject matter. Yeah. Then Prabhupada also told, he said, whoever gets this book, whether they read the book, that the person who got the book, whether they read the book or not, but the book will be there. I mean, even of course, many of them threw the books away, and in the airports they had a whole system where the cleaners of the what do you call it, the refuse cans, they knew that they could get money from the Hare Krishnas if they took the books out and sold them back to the Hare Krishnas. And so that was going on. But Srila Prabhupada was very serious. That even one word, and is that without an authoritative quotation to back it up? No. It's there in the 12th canto at the end of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That even if they read just one word, their whole life can change.
And then he said something else. He said, even if they touch the book.
Yeah, even if they touch the book. And we told, even if they don't touch the book, the other class, we told, Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, divine rays are coming from the book. Okay? So the thing is, the subject matter is so spiritually, powerfully purifying that now it's time without restriction. Everyone. I remember one time, I was in Dallas, Texas. It was probably 1972. I had been a devotee 2 years. And I was on the streets there, and I was distributing books. And one African-American lady, quite roly-poly, she came up, or I came up to her or whatever, showed her the book that I was distributing. And I think I had the nectar of devotion, which of course is unbelievably elevated, right? And then she said to me, oh yeah, I got that Nectar of Devotion book, and I read that book. I love that book. I just love that book. So we don't know who's who, what jiva, what they have in their previous life. None of us know anything. Therefore, Nityananda Shakti. He didn't discriminate. Prabhupada didn't discriminate. And now it's to be given to everyone, without any restriction. So in this way, there are so many, statements in Prabhupada's books, and also in his letters about his books and about distributing his books. So the Srimad Bhagavatam, 12 cantos of Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada was working on that. But by the time 75 came around, they were way back, I think on only the fifth canto at that point, and Prabhupada had already gone ahead in his translation and had completed the entire Chaitanya Charitamrita. And they had only printed, I think, 3 volumes at that point, the Adi Lila. So the Bhagavatam, 5th canto, plus Chaitanya Charitamrita made 17 volumes. They were behind Prabhupada, and I've told the story before. Prabhupada put pressure on them. They did the 2-month marathon, and they caught up. And that was because of the computers. Now the computers helped a lot. They had like this big computer as big as this table, a typesetting computer, which worked all night on its own, and there were so many other advantages to it. And this little phone is like 10,000 times more powerful than that computer, but nevertheless, it was utilized to the maximum. So, yes, so the Chaitanya Charitamrita came out, and the book distributors who were there in LA and all over the West, they were distributing these at the airports and everywhere. Right hot off the press. Literally hot off the press. Every week, 2 new volumes, practically 2 new volumes. They were put up at the lotus feet of Radha and Krishna, and every week the big huge truck came and delivered. So those were exciting days. Remember, those were very exciting days, which are probably not going to be exactly relived in the same way that it was, because everything was new at that point. But there's a lot of even more exciting days coming. Why? Because Krishna Prem is coming. Yes. So, Gurudev is pointing out here, if this Ras Leela were a mundane, lusty affair, then such an exalted personality would not have described this in front of who? The Deva Rishis, demigods, from the higher planetary systems. Maharishis, universal sages. Vipra Rishis, Brahmin sages, and Raja Rishis, saintly kings. They were all present in Sri Parikshit Maharaj's assembly. And if it were something vulgar, then he would have referred to Sri Krishna as Bhogeshwar. You remember, we read this the other day. Right, so at the end of the Ras Leela, Sri Shukadev said, Vikriditam Vrajavadubiridam cha Vishnu. So hearing this pastime of Sri Krishna, who is the hero of Ras Leela, completely expels the disease of lust in the heart. And it bestows the supreme bhakti at the lotus feet of Bhagavan. This is a key verse, both in this introduction, in the Venugita introduction, and this is a key verse. I would say it's probably the most important verse that Srila Gurudev put forward to support his mission of giving these things now. Why? Because some persons have the misconception that you can't hear this until your heart is pure. But the whole discussion that's given, especially in the Venugita, is how, no, that's not true. Because anarthas will not go away just by trying to make them go away. In fact, Gurudev said, even if you try for lakhs of lifetimes to get rid of your anarthas, you'll never be able to do it. Why? Because the only thing that can purify the heart from anarthas is pure bhakti. That's all. There is nothing else that can cause the anarthas to leave the heart. And there are so many supporting statements, nashtak praishu abhatreshu, and all these shlokas in the beginning of Bhagavatam like that. So in that verse, here he's saying, Shraddhan vitam anushuranuyat atavarnayadya. That will all be explained. Gurudev is going to explain that. How the qualification is a person who has some shraddha. Now then we may ask, well, how do these people on the street, they're getting these books? Can we say they have shraddha? We don't know. We don't know. They may be really searching because it's the next step from their previous life. And they're just waiting. A lot of us in this room, we have that experience in our own life. So, cannot judge. So then, it is said that the Ras Leela is the pastime of Krishna's victory over who? Remember? Kandarpa. And therefore he has earned the title Sakshat Manmata Manmata. Directly the bewilderer of the bewilderer of Cupid. Directly the enchanter of Cupid. So devotees call him Madan Mohan, he who bewilders Cupid. Now, in Chaitanya Charitamrita Antya Leela, chapter 5, verses 45 through 47, Srimad Mahaprabhu, the crown jewel of omniscient persons, told Sri Pradyumna Mishra, glorifying Ramananda Rai. You know that story? Pradyumna Mishra. So, Mahaprabhu told, Vraja Vadhu Sange Krishner Rasadi Vilas, Jai Jana Kohe Shune Kariya Vishwas, Hurit Rog Kam Tar Tat Kale Hoy Kshoy, Teen Guna Kshoba Nahe Maha Dhir Hoy. I have to bring my magnifying glass next time. Ujvala Madhurya Prem Bhakti Se Pai Anande Krishna Madhurya Vihare Sadai. Here's the translation. This is what Mahaprabhu told about Ramananda Roy. He said, when a person hears about Sri Krishna's Ras and his other Leelas from the lips of the devotees with full faith, and then that person relates these pastimes to others, the disease of material lust is immediately removed from his heart. Our God brother, Mithiladish Prabhu, the father of Kishore Mohan, he was a very intimate friend of mine. And he told me quite a few times that during the 70s, while Prabhupada was present, and he was very new, he felt himself to be so disturbed by lusty desires. Lusty desires. So then he heard that Srila Prabhupada had given the advice that if you are feeling disturbance, it's like in a letter, I think it was to Hayagriva, maybe even more than one letter, Prabhupada had mentioned this. He says, then you read the Ras Leela chapters from the Krishna book. And that will help you to so Mithiladish every night before he would take rest. He would read Ras Leela. Maybe not the whole 5 chapters, but he would read that. And he said it worked. Yes, it did. So, Mahaprabhu is telling that right here. I mean, who's a greater authority than Mahaprabhu? He's telling that to Pradyumna Mishra, and he's saying that when a person hears about Sri Krishna's Ras and other Leelas from the lips of the devotees with full faith, and then he relates these pastimes to others, the disease of material lust is immediately removed from his heart. The three modes of nature, ignorance, passion, and goodness, they cannot arouse material desires in him whatsoever. The result of such hearing is that he is lifted above the material modes, and thus he no longer becomes agitated. Indeed, he becomes deeply peaceful. He comes to understand that holding on to material desires will stand in the way of his attaining pure praying. What does he come to understand? Now, at this stage, he comes to understand that holding on to material desires, this will stand in the way of his attaining pure praying. He achieves the most relishable, unmotivated praying bhakti endowed with the moods of the selfless gopis. Then he always basks in the bliss of Sri Krishna's sweetness. Now, taking the support of these words uttered by Srimad Mahaprabhu, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has written in his commentary of the Srimad Bhagavatam for the 39th verse of the final chapter of Ras Panchadhyaya. This is what he wrote in his commentary. He said, Bhagavan Sri Krishna's Ras Leela is the very best of all his pastimes. Indeed, it is the crown jewel of all the Leelas. So are the other Leelas to be considered on the same level? No. Must understand this. This is above and beyond all of Krishna's other Leelas. That's why it's also called his Mahalila. And within the Ras Leela, this will be told in the course of time, all the other beautiful exchanges that go on in the Ashtakaliya pastimes, they all take place in Ras Leela, in that pastime. So, the crown, yes, Bhagavan Sri Krishna's Ras Leela is the very best of all his pastimes. Indeed, it is the crown jewel of all the Leelas. And if one hears and then describes this pastime, speaking or writing about it with complete faith in the words of the scriptures, this will bring about his greatest welfare. So I think we can all hope for that. If one does this regularly, then he attains praying bhakti, even while material desires still lurk in the heart. This sentence, I'm going to have all of you repeat. Repeat after me. If one does this regularly, he attains praying bhakti, even while material desires still lurk in the heart. So is that an authoritative statement that we can quote to anyone? Absolutely. Yes, Maharaj?
Can you take a little few moments and just explain how Buddha said who we should hear it from?
Yeah, that's all coming in this introduction. So, eventually, Gurudev goes on, eventually the influence of that praying drives out the disease of lust and other ailments. Drives it out. You don't have to separately endeavor to make it go. It goes of its own accord. Why? Because of praying. So, these two processes go on simultaneously, but praying manifests first. Anyone can achieve success by following this process. No qualification is required. Now, by cultivating this Ras Leela, one can understand that the Vrajabasis are very dear to Krishna. Yes. If you cultivate this Ras Leela pastime, you will come to understand how dear the Vrajabasis are to Krishna. And then out of all the Vrajavasis, his beloved gopis are the special recipients of his love. If you read chapter 4, Adi Lila, and you read Roy Ramananda Samvad, you will be completely bombarded with all of the Siddhanta to support this fact. No one compared to the gopis. No one. So many quotations there from Rupa Goswami's books and others. So, their devotion to Krishna is spotless. And for him, they have given up the bondage of love. Bondage of love. For husband, father, mother, brother, and other relatives. And furthermore, they throw chastity, social restrictions, and other moral codes to the wind, and they run to him. This is the pastime that shows that. Yes. Of course, we will be very interested to hear the commentary of our acharyas, how Yogamaya facilitates all of this. Yes, very interesting. Because now they've gone mad. Now they've completely lost, and hearing Krishna's flute song penetrated into their heart, and they lost consciousness even of their bodies and what they were doing, and they just ran out into the night. We will be reading all of that. And it's so interesting how Krishna received them in the middle of the dark forest. Oh, my dear beloved gopis. Oh, my dear beautiful maidens. What brings you here on such a full moon-lit night into the middle of the forest? Very dangerous here, you know. There are many dangerous forest animals lurking here and there. And then there's a whole discussion. It's so exciting, this Ras Panchadhyaya. It's so exciting. So, Gurudev goes on and he says, therefore, even though Sri Krishna is the Supreme Lord himself, the best of the Aptakam and Atmaram personalities. What does Aptakam and Atmaram mean? Gurudev told this so many times. Atmaram means what? Atma Ram. Self-satisfied with the Atma. Don't need anything external outside of himself. Fully satisfied. Atma Ram. Krishna is that to the highest degree. Then, what's the other word? Apta Kam. What's the meaning of Apta Kam?
All desires are satisfied?
Yeah. If any desire comes to Krishna, which it does, but he's fully capable himself of completely satisfying that desire. Apta Kam, Apta, himself. So, even though Sri Krishna is the Supreme Lord himself, and he's the best of the Apta Kam and Atmaram personalities, and he's the reservoir of all opulences, he was forced to admit in front of all the Braja gopis. Here's Krishna's words as told by Gurudev. Krishna's telling to the gopis, the flag of my love for you is flying at high mast, broadcasting your glorious victory over me. And even if I were to live as long as the demigods, I would not be able to pay you back for what you have done for me. out of your kindness, you may agree to release me from this debt. But really and truly, I will remain indebted to you for all time. I'm your debtor for all time. That's Krishna. Gurudev has just pointed out who's saying this to the gopis. But he's admitting how he has been fully conquered, fully controlled, fully indebted. And he'll never be released from it. Only if they want to release him. But even then, he says, even out of your kindness, you may agree to release me from this debt. But really and truly, I will remain indebted to you for all time. That's what we have to understand. That's what Gurudev came to teach everyone. There is no one that has ever done this. No other devotee, ever, ever, ever. And one of Gurudev's favorite sections of the 10th canto that Gurudev would like to relate in different of his festivals throughout the world was the story of Uddhava's visit to Vrindavan. Very important. Because Uddhav, he witnessed the gopis. And Uddhav also witnessed Krishna. And Uddhav, he is absolutely the highest authority in Mathura Dwarka, in the Yadu dynasty, that understands Krishna's heart and how much Krishna is completely controlled by the love of the gopis. So, now, next point. Of all the Braja Gopis. Yes, there's more, much more. Of all the Braja Gopis, Krishna's topmost beloved is Sri Radha. And who is Radha? She is the embodiment of Mahabhav. She is the very embodiment of Mahabhav. And Madanakya Mahabhav dwells only in her heart. It is not found even in Lalita and her other Sakhis, or in Akhil Rasamrita Sindhu Shri Krishna himself. It's not found. Shri Krishna, Akhil Rasamrita Sindhu, the ocean of all expressions of love, is not found there in his heart. Only Shri Radha is Rasheshwari. Shri Radha's name is what? Rasheshwari. Only she can be called Rasheshwari. Is there anybody else that can be called Rasheshwari? Ever, ever? In all time and space? Never. Only her. Only Shri Radha is Rasheshwari, the mistress of the circle dance. The mistress of the circle dance. Without her, there is no question of ras. Now you know there's two words, just so that everybody is clear on this. Because there's two words. One is called ras, and the other is called ras. Now most of the senior devotees, they know the difference. But I noticed that a lot of times some of the junior devotees, and especially Russian speaking, because they confuse these two syllables very often when they pronounce Sanskrit words. A and a. So, ras, Krishna is called Akhil Ras Amrita Sindhu. Rasa. He is the complete embodiment and the ocean of what? Of rasa. And then to understand what is rasa, then you have to understand the whole Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami. And then, after understanding the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu of Rupa Goswami, then we can comprehend what's here in this Ras Leela chapter, 5 chapters. But still, we are moving forward. So, without Radha, without her, there is no question of Ras. Ras means what? Rasa dance. Not rasa dance, rasa dance. Okay? When you say Ras, you're only referring to the dance. When you say Ras, you're referring to rasa. Prem ras. Like that. So in this way, through Ras Leela, Sri Krishna has proclaimed the greatness of the Braja Gopis and especially of Sri Radha. The crown jewel of Paramahansas, Srila Shukadeva Goswami, he called Ras Bihari Sri Bhagavan, he called him Sakshat Manmata Manmata. This is what Shukadeva Goswami called Rasa Bihari Krishna. Sakshat Manmata Manmata. When did he call him that? Sakshat means he is directly the bewilderer of Cupid. He called him that when Krishna reappeared. After he had left the gopis and the gopis were searching everywhere. And when Krishna reappeared there, he looked very humble. He had his pitambara like this. But he was so beautiful. He was so spellbindingly beautiful. And therefore Shukadeva Goswami said, he is Sakshat Manmata Manmata. He directly, here he is. Here he is. There's nobody who can do what he does. He is the completely, directly Sakshat Manmata Manmata, the bewilderer of Cupid. Very significant. Why Shukadeva Goswami calls him that at that stage. Now, Pradumna, you know the Chaturvyuha? Who are the Chaturvyuha? What are the names of the Chaturvyuha? Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. Where do these expansions come from? Huh? Yes, but from which expansion of Baladev? They don't directly come from Baladev. Huh? Yes. Baladev appears where? In Dwarka, as Mul Sankarshan. Krishna also appears in Dwarka as Vasudev. Right? Sometimes he shows 4 arms. So, here, Gurudev is explaining that Pradumna of the Chaturvyuha is called Sakshat Manmata as well. Did you know that? Yeah. Pradumna, the son of Krishna, is called Sakshat Manmata. Not Sakshat Manmata Manmata, but Sakshat Manmata. Okay, here he's explaining. His quality of also being the enchanter of Cupid comes directly from Ras Bihari Sri Krishna. In the material realm, the demigod Cupid churns the hearts of ordinary humans, making them feel that they have fallen in love. Right? Is that not the favorite topic of every single poetry, of all songs? Falling in love, falling in love. Everybody wants that. Why? Because Gurudev said, it is the nature of the jiva. It is the nature of the jiva to go where he is loved. And even in the material world. Even you watch the dogs here in Navadvip, they have their little families. They stay with their family because they're loved. They're looked after there. All species of life. So, But this is the function of the demigod Cupid in the material world, right? Churning the heart of the ordinary humans and making them feel that they have fallen in love. If I asked any of you here to name 5 songs that you've heard in your life that talk about love in the title of the song, all you need is love. So you'd all be able to talk about it because it's the most common thing. But it's not actually love. That feeling of falling in love is mundane Kamadev, making them feel that way. Mundane Kamadev. And he is merely a shadow of an expansion of the expansions of Pradyumna, the ordinary Kamadev. It is this mundane Kamadev who was so bewildered by Ras Bihari Sri Krishna at the beginning of Ras Leela that he fainted in his excitement to serve him. This Ras Bihari, Madan Mohan, is a fresh youth. What is the word for fresh youth? Navakishora. Navakishora. Fresh youth. And he's also the best of dancers. What is the word for best of dancers? Natavara. Natavara. And he goes to the hearts of very fortunate persons where he captivates the worldly Cupid. And when this material, Madan, faints, Krishna tugs at their heartstrings. And now these persons' hearts are continuously churning with the desire to attain their spiritual body, favorable for serving Madan Mohan exclusively in Madhur Ras, the amorous knower. That's where we're trying to go, isn't it? We're trying to achieve this. But this can only be achieved when the transcendental Cupid comes and churns our heart. And his name is Madan Mohan. Now, Akhil Rasamrita Murti, Sri Bhagavan, he is the enjoyer of 4 rasas, Dasya, Sakya, Vatsalya, and Madhur. But his topmost beauty manifests in Madhur Ras. Yes, he is also tasting and enjoying exchanges in those 4 rasas with his eternal associates and his pure devotees. But his topmost beauty manifests only in Madhurya Rasa. What do you mean? Krishna is less beautiful? Yeah. Yeah. There's gradation. The special moods he displayed, the special moods he displays, they depend on the particular dham and also on the associates with whom he appears. The moods that he displays. It is with the Braja Devis that his sweetness increases to the highest degree, and during the Ras Leela, his sweetness and his attractiveness are experienced to the ultimate degree. Got it? Understand? That's what's special about the Ras Leela. Right here in this one sentence. It's not shown anywhere else at any other time. What's not shown? I'm reading it again. His sweetness increases to the highest degree. And then during the Ras Leela, his sweetness and attractiveness are experienced to the ultimate degree. Ultimate means this is the end of it. There's no other beyond this. No other beyond this. Wow. I love this sentence. So this Rasa Bihari, Madan Mohan, he is directly Sakshat Manmata. Manmata. Sakshat Manmata Manmata. And the crown jewel of all his beloveds is Sri Radharani, the embodiment of Mahabhav. She relishes the happiness of serving Sri Krishna, and she facilitates his tasting bliss in Ras and other leelas in Vrindavan. Krishna was not able to repay the gopis for the love-filled seva they rendered to him in the Ras Leela. Thus, he feels ever indebted to them. But this entity called Prem, it is beyond our imagination. Is it? I've been trying to imagine for like 53 years, but it's beyond imagination. There is no way to imagine it. Yes. But this entity called Prem is beyond our imagination. So one who has relished it, listen to this one who has relished it, Prem, on the strength that it bestows, he cannot describe its characteristics. And in the end, the only words that they can utter is what? Madhur, Madhur, how sweet, how sweet. There's a beautiful excerpt from Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj's. I'm not sure if it's Sri Guru and His Grace or Search for Sri Krishna. I think it's Search for Sri Krishna. But there he's quoting from Krishna Karnamritam. Who's the author of Krishna Karnamritam? Bilvamangal Thakur. And Bilvamangal Thakur is trying to express the sweetness of Krishna's form. So I'll try to remember. Madhuram Madhuram Vapurasya Vibho. Madhuram Madhuram Vadanam Madhuram. Madhur Smritam Etadadho. Oh, Madhur Gandhi Madhur Smritam Etadadho. Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. So, in the first line, and this is how Srila Bilvamangal Thakur is being explained by Srila Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj. And he's telling Krishna is sweetness personified. There is no way to describe his sweetness. But Bilvamangal Thakur is just expressing it by using the words what? Sweet! Sweet, 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 sweetest. So, the first line. Madhuram, Madhuram, Vapur, Asya Vibho. This means that that person who's Vibho, that he's the supreme, absolute personality. And his form, Vapu. Vapu means his form, is the sweetest of the sweet. But then he says, Madhuram, Madhuram, Vadanam Madhuram. Now he says sweet 3 times in that line. But even sweeter than his form, now you have to see his face. His Vadanam. Vadanam means his face. Madhuram, Madhuram, Vadanam, Madhuram. Sweet, 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 sweet. Madhur Gandhi Mridu Smitam Etad Adho. Now he says the sweet, overpowering sweet fragrance of his beautiful smile is completely so astonishing There is no way to describe it. So there finally he just surrenders and he says, Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. Sweet, sweet, sweet. So this is what Gurudev is saying here, that a person who's trying to describe the beauty that he's experiencing, Krishna's sweetness, everything, in the end, they just surrender and all they can just say is Madhur, Madhur, how sweet, how sweet. Can't be described. So, almost finished now. Rasa Rasika Sri Krishna himself has said. Where did he say this? This is quoted from the Brihad Vamana Purana, and it's quoted in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So, this is Rasa Rasika Sri Krishna, who enjoys the ras of the rasa dance. He himself says, Santi yadyapi me pratya leelas tas to ta manohara nahi jane smrite rase mano me kidrisham bhavet. Krishna says, I enjoy many pastimes, and all of them are enchanting. But Ras Leela is so powerful that as soon as I think about it, I can't explain what happens to my heart. Krishna is telling. There are no words to describe his condition when he is drowning in the flood of the nectar of Ras, going absolutely mad as he relishes supreme bliss. Indeed, he gets completely overwhelmed just remembering it. In Ras Leela, no one has even a scent of desire for one's personal gratification. So therefore, no one has any other desire for their personal gratification. No one that's there in the rasa dance has any desire for their personal gratification. And therefore, Sridhar Swami Pad has called this Leela, he calls it the ultimate renunciation. He calls it Nivritti Para. Nivritti Pareyam Rasa Panchadhyai Iti Vyakti Karishyama. He says, I will be describing detachment as generated in Rasa Panchadhyaya. Ultimate renunciation and detachment. Shri Krishna himself has no desire to please his own senses. His only desire is to give pleasure to the hearts of the devotees. He himself has said this in the Padma Purana. Mad bhaktanam vinodartam karomi vividha kriya. Krishna says, I engage in a vast variety of pastimes just to entertain my dear devotees in every single ras, every note. However, the primary purpose of his existence, whose existence? Krishna's existence. Want to know the primary purpose why he exists? It is to fulfill the Braja Devi's heartfelt yearnings. There you go. That's all. That's the principal purpose for Krishna's existence, to fulfill the Vraja Devi's heartfelt yearnings. Thus, he performs Ras Leela, by which he also tastes untold joy. So, this is almost the end of this introduction. I'm just reading this last paragraph. Krishna's sweetness is so inconceivable that it awakens a tremendous enthusiasm to relish it in the heart of whoever hears about his charming pastimes. Eventually, this enthusiasm overpowers him with such greed that he takes the shelter of a guru. So here's the sequence now. For that person who hears Krishna's pastimes, they're so charming that eventually this enthusiasm overpowers him with such greed that he takes the shelter of a guru and he dedicates himself to bhajan. But there is one point to be emphasized in regard to the hearing this katha. And here it is, Maharaj. One must hear only from a Vaishnava who is relishing Krishna's sweetness in his heart at every moment. An intense desire consequently arises in the heart of the hearer. But if you hear from one who is in the grip of anarthas, all you will gain is anarthas. Ordinary persons, not knowing the secret realities of the pastimes, they actually take Krishna and the Braja Gopis in the wrong way, and they show contempt for them. But hearing pure devotees' deliberations on this book will surely wash away that mistaken understanding. Of this I am completely sure, Gurudev says. So, that's why I'm attempting, because Gurudev is telling us. And he's quoting those other personalities. Certainly not this low jiva. But what he's giving, I'm trying to project that so we can put it into our hearts. And then Gurudev ends his introduction by saying, I have full faith that the Raganuga sadhaks who are thirsty for Braj Ras Bhakti, they will deeply appreciate this book. The faithful devotee will read this book and thus become qualified to receive the great treasure of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's praying. And due to the pressure of time, there may be some mistakes, so I request the reader to correct them while reading. But finally, I appeal to my most worshipable Guru Pada Padma, who is the condensed embodiment of Bhagavan's mercy, that he showers me with profuse mercy and thus enables me to fulfill his innermost desires. This is my prayer at his lotus feet, which bestows Krishna praying. Praying for the mercy of Sri Hari Guru and Vaishnavas on the disappearance day of Srila Guru Pada Padma, Saradiya Ras Purnima, 14th October 2008, this Deenheen, wretched and fallen, Swami B.V. Narayan. Gaur Prema. Good? So good. So good. We're going to continue and continue. And I'm also going to read, as I told you, the Venu Gita introduction. And also I'm going to delve into the 4th chapter of Adi Leela. And this is all going to come in the next few days, the next few classes, before we actually begin reading the 1st chapter. So, Shri Ras Panchadhyay ki jai, Shri Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Shri Braj Gopi Ganna ki jai, Shri Vrindavan Dhama ki jai, Jai Nanta Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai, Shri Rupanuga Guru Varga ki jai, Sacinandan Gaura Hari ki jai, Shri Nityananda Mahajana ki jai, Shri Panchatattva ki jai, Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Govindai Tulsidevai Priyai Keshavasya Chai Krishna Bhakti Pradevi Sajavachai Namo Namah Vancha Kalpatarubhascha Kripa Sindhubheva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. All glory to the Assembled Devotees.